microphone's not on. You can prepare for almost everything, but not that. All right, we ready for that church chat theme?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm just not wanting to play, but maybe I'll press the space bar. It's church chat with Pastors Dan and Dave. Come hang out with us on our stream. It's Church Chat Wednesday.
All right, it is Church Chat Wednesday. I'm Pastor Dan.
And I'm Pastor Dave.
And we are coming to you just a little bit earlier than what we normally do because we have a very special guest that we want to get to right away this morning. Bishop Gregory Palmer, who's the bishop of the West Ohio Conference here in the United Methodist Church, is going to be our guest today. So he also has his own thing that he does at 12:15. He started at the same time that we did back at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, because we've been trying to get him for a long time.
Yep, and so we decided we were going to make it work today.
We're ready to bring him on?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me join the
Should
call
we
here.
have angels or choir come up?
There we are.
There he is. I
Oh.
see.
Let me just...
All right.
Just calling you all.
I saw I was getting a phone call from you. We were pushing the button at the same time. So,
All right.
Bishop Palmer, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time. And I just wanted to start off by asking you, you, like everyone else, have been going through this time of the pandemic with coronavirus and everything. Just personally, how are you doing? Maybe more importantly, how's Mrs. Palmer doing dealing with having you home? Maybe more than what you have been for the past year. How have you been?
Well, I would say we're both doing fine, and we've been very fortunate, not personally affected by it, meaning that we've had COVID ourselves, and no one in a number of the circles going out in our family. So for aging parents, 90s and 80s, to have steered clear of this, as well as children and siblings, we consider that positive and a blessing. And so we're grateful. We're able to give our attention in love and in prayer to supporting those that have been more dramatically personally affected. So it has been an adjustment that I, especially more in the earlier months than even now that I was home more, and I still am working from my home study a fair amount. So I'm sure Cynthia will be so grateful that you included her in the circle of conversation and prayer. The good news about that, and I've heard this from several colleagues who are in my age group, that it was a kind of a great, albeit we wouldn't wish it, but a test run that we could survive retirement. So when you look to say, okay, what good came out of this? We decided, right house, right arrangement of rooms, that retirement and being in each other's physical presence more of the day would not be a deal breaker by any means.
So with a change in routine, Bishop, how have you been able to find mental and spiritual renewal?
So in a number of ways, I was saying in another interview type conversation yesterday that I'm actually in some ways more focused spiritually in terms of discipline practices, that I engage in a disciplined way. And that my spiritual disciplines are, I'm reading the Bible and praying more, not just to get ready for the next event. So it doesn't mean there haven't been events. It means that the events are happening in a different way, more digitally, et cetera. So in that sense, it feels positive. And when things move to whatever the next is, I do have a modicum of anxiety. Okay, will I go back to bad habits? And again, I still want us to break the back of COVID. Want everybody that can get vaccinated to get vaccinated, et cetera. So that's on me. It's not on the Lord or anybody else. I would say in terms of other well-being, we miss physically being with family, and because we truly can't say we're in the same bubble because we don't, our kids live in North Carolina. Parents are either North Carolina or Philadelphia. So siblings spread around. So we're not close enough to get in the same bubble without, a long distance travel. I think the minimum distance we have to anybody of that kind is closer to the 500-mile range. So, which means certain preparation has to be taken and precaution. So that, but thank God for this technology.
Yes.
Same way I'm talking to you guys, in a way we're talking more. And the third area is hit me. I'm talking to friends from high school that I haven't talked to in 45 years.
Wow.
And so, people started seeking each other out through social media. I'm hearing, a lot of the people I went to high school with in Philadelphia stayed in, closer to Philadelphia in the Mid-Atlantic corridor. So they see each other. They've been talking to each other for 40 plus years. I kind of went off to the far country, so to speak. So that part feels actually good. And again, I wouldn't wish it to happen this way. My bad that I didn't stay in better touch, but I'm happy to have that connection.
Yeah. From your seat, I know that you are always a person that, at least from my experience with you, that looks for the ways in which God is blessing us, even in the difficult times. And I wonder, in the midst of all of this, how you are experiencing the West Ohio Conference in general, what you've seen happening in ministries in various churches, ways in which you've seen churches be nimble. I know that there's a lot of fear about what is this doing to churches? Will churches be able to survive this? Where are the places where you have just been filled with hope for the church going forward through all of this?
I want to say I'm very excited. I couldn't be more pleased at the way in which the vast majority of our churches, if not all of them, have responded. One, the adaptation to using digital ways of communicating with people. And we're talking about some churches that went from 0 to 80. Churches like yours, you guys were already doing some things, and yet you went from 80 to 120. And I know it's been a strain on our pastors and lay workers and lay volunteers to do that, but it's been meaningful in that way. So I couldn't be more pleased at the adaptation. Secondly, what I have noticed is in that the ministries that our congregations do, whether themselves or in partnership with an ecumenical group or other United Methodist churches or some community group that meet direct human needs like feeding people, that kind of thing, people have washed their hands, they put their masks on, and they've gone to those food banks and continued those distributions. So they didn't let people who were already more vulnerable become even more vulnerable. I'm not suggesting that there's not a lot of food insecurity that's been created through this crisis. I mean, the supply chain has been challenged, all of that kind of thing. But churches and our people in our congregations, they kept that good work going under new and safe environments and practices. So that's heartening. And in some ways, just like when I put something out digitally, and as you do in your place, what I'm discovering is I've got an audience, you have an audience of people not just in your community. So we've become national and global in some ways. I don't know where that goes from here, but I have heard stories of people that have logged on to a service, they knew somebody, et cetera, and they're joining churches from Seattle, Washington, and they're joining churches on the East Coast. And they were the people generationally or otherwise that they were looking for a church to connect with, and the physical presence wasn't the main thing for them. So that, how do we attend to that going forward? I want to get back together I want to be with people. I think we can't dispense with where we've grown digitally, and the churches and leaders that put that aside and think I don't have to do that anymore, they're sunk. They'll find themselves at a standstill, in my opinion. So how do we do some of both and meet those needs? So here's the summary. I've been out of seminary come May 42 years. This is the most intense period of creativity I've experienced in 42 years of ministry, but I didn't see it coming. I didn't have a plan. And we adapted. And yesterday, somebody made the point of saying, helping us to see the distinction between adaptation and innovation. So how do we move from adapt? We made some changes to survive, to innovate. We actually changed.
Yeah. That's a great. I think that's a great point, because it was just kind of forced on us, and honestly, our church had some digital stuff going, but really we threw it together and have been learning and adapting as we've gone forward. And yeah, I would tend to agree that we are sunk if we decide to just entirely go back at some point in time. Did I think I got an invitation yesterday, and maybe you could share a little bit about, there's a speaker who's going to be sharing some things in March in a leadership capacity around digital ministry.
Nona Jones, who is a part of the global marketing arm of Facebook. She is a person of personal faith in Jesus Christ, and she and her husband have a church ministry, and she has done one segment seminar with a smaller group of people in our conference, and so this is widening the audience to say, y'all come and hear what some options and opportunities, and sort of help us to see the future. And some of these are things that she's put into practice, not just for her work a day stuff with Facebook, but also in local church and faith-based ministry settings. So I would encourage people to connect. It's not just for clergy, but it is for church people and staff and volunteers, because all of us depend on an innumerable number of volunteers to get our stuff going. So please consider signing up for that leadership clinic.
We'll be sure to include that sign up link in this video as we go forward. James, I'll have to get that to you, but we'll make sure we put that in there for anybody who's interested. I want to switch gears just a little bit. One of the things that was an unintended consequence, at least from the place that I sit, of the pandemic, is that the global denominational conversations that had been really heating up seem to have taken a little bit of a backseat in terms of general conference and the future of the denomination, and some of those conversations that were happening. And I'm sure that those conversations are still happening, but they don't seem to be at the forefront right now. I was wondering if you could give us just a little bit of an idea of where things are denominationally. General conference, does it look like it's going to be happening in the foreseeable future, or are we still kind of in a COVID stage right now? Just any insight you might have.
Sure. Well, I like your image of heating up, and I would say they went to a very low simmer, which is still pretty hot.
Yeah.
You put it on the back burner, and I use that as a metaphor, not as a matter of measuring importance. We're scheduled to have General Conference starting at the end of August and into the first week of September. The Commission on the General Conference will make a decision on February 20. Okay. And therefore, I assume a public announcement will happen sometime between the 20th and, I'm making this up, the 23rd, okay, within 72 hours of their meeting adjourning. And that is a global body of our denomination. And their decision point is, will there be the postponed 2020 General Conference in Minneapolis? So that's the first decision point. And the second is, will we be able to have, when will there be a a postponed general conference that has physicality to it, face-to-faceness. And thirdly, the other thing I hear being discussed, and I'm not a member of that body, is there anything that we could get done in a virtual format? So they're discussing, is there a refined, 3 or 4 agenda items that are kind of up or down? So for example, we technically don't have a budget for 2021 as a denomination. So their, General Counsel and Finance and Administration is using basically the 2020 budget and all of that. So I don't know what the outcome is. I concur with you, Pastor Dan. I don't see the path to have a physical face-to-face meeting starting on August 28th or 29th of 2021. But it's not my call. It's the commission's call. But then the other question is, can people get in? If we were only a national body, maybe possible, close, but still, that'd still be a squeaker. And so you have all those issues of ours being an international or global, a global church. So, but less than a month now. Today's the 27th of January. So in less than a month, we'll know.
Okay.
And now back to your metaphor. Whatever that announcement is, if they say, hey, we're going to Minneapolis, that simmer will go back to a boil, in my opinion. And if they say we're not going to do it in 2021, it is blank of 2022, I still think the temperature will rise because people will see a path to when it's going to happen.
So if we stick with that metaphor for a moment, I wonder if you'd be willing to share, and I know that in your position it's difficult sometimes to be able to really share all of your personal feelings on things, but it seems like it was a helpful thing. Maybe you always want to move towards justice, but maybe it was a helpful thing to turn the temperature down for a time, to be able to have some better conversations. I just wonder kind of what your thought is on that.
I do think in this unplanned interim, people have tried to be more thoughtful in thinking through the details and the nuances of what remaining together looks like and what separation could look like. And I think, there'll be multiple ways in which people may attempt to separate from the United Methodist Church. That said, I do believe that there will be a continuing United Methodist Church. And the question is, how will people align themselves, and what will the doctrine, teaching, and values of a continuing body or new bodies be? Third reality is there are churches, and I would say at both ends of the spectrum, for lack of a better image. Some that would consider themselves very traditional on matters of human sexuality and the Christian faith, others very progressive leaning, so to speak, or liberal in that regard, that are seeking pathways to separate now. They're doing that individually, but there are also some that are trying to organize to say, might we go as a group? And I think people are going in different directions. I see some people moving. I see a little bit more of an impulse in this delay, that churches that say, hey, we can't wait in this delay. And I think these are fewer rather than more, but they're going independent. And they're not necessarily aligning. And so there's, which doesn't mean they might not align somewhere down the road.
Right.
So those are a few of the things I see coming. So this idea that we've had a chance to pause and be more thoughtful but delays also in when people believe there's going to be a resolution and then they feel a sense of delay, there is a frustration.
Sure.
Now, in that same window of delay, we have had this enormous social and political upheaval that we've had to give attention to, and rightly so. And as I said to the annual conference, one virus we knew, 400-year-old,
Yeah.
and one virus we didn't have a name for it, so to speak, for several months. And then you've got this upheaval in the body politic in the United States, and that's not even specifying the political unrest in a number of places where the United Methodist Church is very strong. I mean, there's just been some tremendous national upheaval in the Democratic Republic of Congo, to which we as West Ohio are deeply related. I know of United Methodist leaders there who are aligned in a particular way, who are literally in hiding. So we're it's not just us.
Yeah.
So we you do have to take care of what you have access to, but our prayers and hopefully our national government can be helpful in other places. But the United States has its hands somewhat full right now.
So in that same vein, could you just give a word to in light of the social and political upheaval? I know that I have felt, and I'm sure others have felt, this tension between bridge building, peacemaking, and truth telling, and how these all kind of pull us in different directions. How do you reconcile that? The idea that we want to be a people that come together and are, just we want to be all about love and peace and everything, but there's also a truth-telling aspect to all of this. What would you say to encourage pastors who are trying to lead through, and just Christians in general, people of Christ who in general are trying to live out these things in their community and their daily lives?
Well, you've spoken beautifully. Thank you for describing that tension. It's kind of a knot, and so you've painted a beautiful picture. I do think we have to. I think we're called to persist in this matter, particularly in these social upheavals, which are significantly focused on race, though not exclusively on that, as we witnessed on Epiphany. Though I need to say, from where I sit, my social location, my read of history is that is not detached from a racialized society. So I think it's larger than that, but there's a big bundle of, I think, fear around that. I think people's fears have increased in our nation as we have moved toward what has been predicted for half a century, that the demographics of so-called majority and minority populations, that there was going to be a shift. So I think we've got to grow our hearts and our courage to say that, for example, if the United States of America is not majority Euro-American in heritage come 2040 or whatever the tipping point is, does that mean we're not American? And that's where people have associated, in my mind, that to be an American, there is an unspoken picture that he or she that is the American. And remember, there was one time at which you were an American if you were an Anglo male. And just look at the issues of women not voting, et cetera. And then, so we've got to detach it from it means it's this group of people, and we have to live in fear of this other group or these other groups of people. And it will take some growing, as I said, of our courage and the thickness of our skin. But I also know that from experience, not being a person who wants to run into burning buildings, I'll just be frank with you. That doesn't float my boat. That when I have asked of the Holy Spirit for the mind and the heart, and let me say the soul, that helps me to move into what I've perceived as a danger zone, that the Holy Spirit has been faithful. So it's sort of like those texts on persecution in the gospel, that when you come to that moment, God will give you what you are to say. Yeah. When you stand before tribunals and stand before your persecutors. And I think that we need We need to ask the Holy Spirit to do what only the Holy Spirit can do for us. Fourthly, I would say there are some models at a national scale that we have yet to employ. I think we have our adaptive ways of them, but if you look at a place that went through the unburdening of itself from apartheid, like South Africa, and we saw some of this in Zimbabwe, we saw it in Sierra Leone. So these models around truth and reconciliation commissions, Bishop Tutu, all of that, those models may need to be more formalized in our culture. And now I think we have somewhat other names for them, and we move toward it. I don't know that we're quite there, but I think that's a little bit about what citizen review boards are about with the matters of policing and race. I think it tends to that, and I see that as positive. And if I may say, this is maybe more than you want. You know, when things go awry, and I know our law enforcement personnel have taken a lot of heat, and there are a couple of things. Every one of us knows that if you look at law enforcement as a whole, there are a lot of good apples. Let me say that again. There are a lot of good apples. There's more than one bad apple or bad actors. And whether or not, I don't think it's by any means the majority. And I think we have to affirm both. Now, here's the other part of that, and I'm just using that as one niche. All of us, what I've noticed in our professions / vocations, we tend to move into a protectionism, so that when people are talking about, you know, some of the scandalous behavior of some police officers, and let's just go back to George Floyd, you know, 8 minutes and 46 seconds with your knee on any human being's neck, with people watching, including other law enforcement officers who did not act decisively in that moment, is just unacceptable. It's inhumane. It's inhumane. And so we tend to move into our protection. Now, what I want to say in fairness to law enforcement, since they were an illustration, is clergy do it. You know, we say, well, I'm not like that clergy. I don't cross those boundaries. So every field we, you know, when educators are being criticized, you know, everybody says, well, that's not me. But what we have to do, back to the truth telling, is to say, it's not, and it's not the majority. However, don't shut down the discussion of how we become better. So whether it's preachers, whether it's educators, whether it's law enforcement, whether or not it's the law, meaning lawyers and judges, whether or not, you see what I'm trying to say? We have this, we want to protect our guild. And that's what shuts down discussion. So back to the race thing again. As we grow our courage and grow our skin, the thickness of our skin, the first time an Anglo sister or brother is in a pretty heated conversation, there may be a default mode to say, well, I've never done that as a white guy to these. And so I think we just have, and that may be actually factually true. How does one process that and not throw it out there as a way to shut down the discussion that needs to take place? So that's how we get at that tension. Tell our truth, everybody tell their truth, without the goal of shutting down conversation.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you bringing your wisdom to that conversation. I want to be respectful of your time, because I know that at 12:15, we had the same idea back in March to go live on Facebook on Wednesdays. We normally go at noon and usually go at 12:15 with a prayer time for the conference. So I like to think that since March, we've been your opening act. And so it's a pleasure to open for the bishop, as always.
Well, I hope I haven't embarrassed you. Sometimes it's better to go first, and so Thanks
Yep.
for this opportunity. Thanks for what you're doing in your
Absolutely.
setting, both of you and all of the people that are alongside of you. I'm honored and to be in partnership with you. And better days are ahead. But I like this. I'll like it better. I know where you're sitting. I've been in that room, so I'll like it better when I can come back. And so,
I appreciate that, Bishop. I do have
Absolutely.
one final question for you.
Sure.
I recently was in a conversation with a colleague of ours, Reverend Adam Hamilton, and we were discussing, I think, probably the most divisive issue in the U.S. right now. He's a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, and they're playing Tampa Bay coming up. His Chiefs hurt my Browns pretty bad the other day. I'm wondering, do you have a pick for the game?
Man, I struggled on Sunday because I saw the Bills as the bigger underdog in the whole playoff thing, and but I like Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City. So I got to tell you, for Sunday, it's kind of, if I can be, boy, I hope I don't pay a big price for this. It's hard for me to root for Tom Brady too much. So let me say that. So the generous way is to say he's had lots of opportunities.
Yeah.
He's a lock on the Hall of Fame. He's gonna have more money than he can ever spend. So I figure, while I don't know who the statistical underdog is, but I'm saying let Kansas City have a little bit of love.
Yeah, let them have some more fun. All right, I appreciate that, and I'm sure Reverend Hamilton will appreciate that as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right, thank you
See
so
you
much,
guys.
Bishop.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Hey, bless you. Bless you. Be encouraged. Bye bye.
Bye. I've had a tickle in my throat the whole time. But I will say this before we really get into it. You stepped on my last question. I was going to
sorry.
ask him the same thing.
Oh, were you?
So here's what I want to know: is who are you taking?
It's hard because I'm with him. It's hard for me to root with Tom Brady on much. He's had plenty of turns, although not everybody on Tampa Bay's had a turn, and so I understand. Although this would be Tampa Bay's third team in a year to get to a championship game. The Lightning and the Rays have both been to a game. I still have a bitter taste in my mouth from losing to Kansas City, and so I'll be okay with any outcome. I'm hoping for a good football game. If I have to make a pick, I think I'm going to pick. I see Tampa Bay winning the game.
Okay. So you see Tampa Bay winning, but that's not who you want.
I want the Browns to win it, but it's not going to happen. So it is what it is.
See, I myself, we have this thing in America. Like, he's doing really well. He's probably the great. I'm sick of him.
I want him
So
to crash.
I want him to go down. I'm not like that.
Yeah, you want to see
I
it.
just want to see. I think he is like.
There's
guy
a
is
privilege.
incredible.
We will get to tell grandchildren someday I lived in the time of Tom Brady.
I mean,
I got to watch him play.
He's been
That's fair.
10 times.
Oh yeah.
And I just want
It's
to see him.
unbelievable.
I want to see him put rings on his fingers.
He's been
on his
to
toes.
18% of the Super Bowls.
Wow.
It's silly.
I know, and I want to see how far this can go.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, I really like Mahomes. When he got knocked out during the Browns game, very first thing I said was, "Oh man, I hope he's not okay. I hope he's okay, but I hope he stays out of the game."
I want to get back to the Bishop conversation, but something else crazy that happened. So this is a very long story that I'll make short. So Mahomes gets knocked out of the game, and do you remember who came in?
Yes.
Chad Henne. Chad Henne, perennial backup quarterback for a lot of teams. He's been a backup forever. I forgot he was in the league, to be honest. It was 5 or 6 years ago. My brother and sister-in-law, Holly's older brother, went on a cruise somewhere, and were just didn't know anybody else really on the cruise. And so sister-in-law Becky, she was down doing her laundry one day, and another girl down there doing her laundry, and they decided, hey, let's get together with our spouse, let's have dinner together tonight. And it just so happens this was Chad Henney's, I think, fiance at the time. And so they got to know the Henneys really well.
That's
and
cool.
Tyler, her brother, doesn't care anything about football at all. And so they're talking about, like, everybody else is like fawning over him, knowing he's an NFL quarterback. And Tyler, who's a plumber, is like, yeah, but if your toilet breaks, who you calling? I mean, you're calling me, right? So they've been to his house. They've like hung out together and stuff like that.
That's
so
cool.
when he came in and was the one who beat the Browns, I was like, really? Him? Did it have to be him? Did it have to be him? Because I do know that he's a good guy.
So you're taking Kansas City. I'm taking Tampa Bay. But enough guy talk. Let's get to
All right, yeah, let's
churchy stuff.
All right, so appreciate the bishop coming on.
Absolutely.
James, did we have anybody bring up anything in the comments necessarily about?
There were no questions, but a bunch of people said how much they enjoyed hearing the conversation. Angie Murdoch, Philip Mosher, Tina Miller.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people to just listen to him talk about things, because he has a way of speaking that I really appreciate.
He has a way of being very personal as well. One of the greatest, I shouldn't say the greatest, one of my most special moments in ministry was when I was at the summit. It's kind of where you figure out, hey, am I going to take the plunge on this thing called being a pastor or not? And when we came up and did, and we had communion, and he gave each of us a rock and just told us to claim our call. There was just something about it. Like, I know he said it to
But he was saying it to you.
300 people there. But at that second, I really felt deep in my soul that he was talking to me on a personal level. And that's been one of my most special moments. And it did help me claim my call.
I appreciate, maybe some of you who are listening aren't super familiar with what's going on denominationally, but in general conferences, really for a long time, but I remember 2012 being the first time it was really kind of a big thing. We have general conference every 4 years, global conference where people from United Methodists all over the world come together to kind of talk about, the things of the church and move forward. And there's been a large split, as he mentioned, from those who would consider themselves more conservative, those who would consider themselves more progressive, especially around the issue of human sexuality, but other things as well. Just the way that we read the Bible, the way that we interact with each other, all of these things. So he ended up at the last general conference for one of these really big conversations, being the bishop who was in kind of the presiding chair.
It was the last one.
At that time. And I appreciate the way in which he can talk about both sides of an issue without making anybody feel as if you are less than, but without mincing his words either, and that was a part of why I wanted to ask him particularly the question around there's truth-telling and there's peacemaking, and how do you see these two things coming together? Because he's one of those people that I see living that out, especially in his leadership role, in a way that I appreciate and admire.
But you also brought another ingredient to that, which I think is important and very important to the bishop, and that is justice. In that, when you were talking about your not there of truth and
because I think that is very important to him. Partially because he is a person of color who's living in the United States during this time. That he has a different perspective than I do, and a different history than I do, and so I appreciate his insight into those conversations. I mean, his reality is is that the majority of the West Ohio Conference is pretty white, and in the United Methodist Church. And so his leadership in that aspect, I think, is important. And I loved the way he talked about things can be, your truth, that those truths matter, and we don't need to, in our protective modes, shut down somebody else from speaking. A thing can be true, it can be true that, he used the issue of the police officers and all that. Yes, the vast majority, like, that is true, but that doesn't mean we can't always try to be better. Right. And I love that he turned it back on the clergy, because I think we all know that churches a lot of times don't have a great reputation, and sometimes deservedly so. I like to think that not all pastors are bad. I am one. But that doesn't mean that it's not true that there have been churches and pastors who have hurt others, and that I can have a role in some way in preventing that from happening and trying to bring healing and justice and restoration to those who have been harmed by the church. And I want to do that because I think it's important to the gospel.
Well, and without treading too much in hot water, we just had that conversation yesterday, you and I, because we were talking about interpreting the Bible and how, yes, there's the Bible's true, but if you're always just going to default to the Bible as truth, it shuts down other conversations that need to happen.
Yeah, you can have conversations around that at the same time.
You can affirm those
without
things,
saying the Bible's. So you're saying the Bible's not true? It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But let's have a rational conversation. Yeah. We tend to just go into our corner and pick our sides right away without really having a whole lot of dialogue. So the dialogue's not always easy, and he talked about, you have to have some thicker skin sometimes to have some of these conversations, but conversations that are important.
Now, for people who might not know what's going on, I wonder if some of the conversation is going to change, because here's where we were is at one point they had taken 16 people who were on
it's church chat with Pastors Dan and Dave. Come hang out with us on our stream. It's Church Chat Wednesday.
Changing some of the language in our book of discipline around homosexuality and somewhere. And so what they did is they took sort of 8 people from each side, and really what they had come down to was a general consensus of maybe we'd just be better off if we split, and here's how we could do this. And that was kind of, whether or not that was going to go through, who knows, but that was going to be on a big thing we were going to talk about this past general conference. I wonder, with this delay, if that conversation will change. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see kind of what ends up coming out of the dates that are being set here in February.
Well, even still, you have a whole, now it's a year, soon to be 2 years of parking lot conversations and back channel conversations.
Yeah.
Who knows how the conversation will change.
Yeah. Something else we talked about at the beginning of our conversation with him that I appreciated was the use of the way we've gone. We adapted a lot in what we were doing, and going from adaptation to innovation, I think he's right. It's going to be important. So we'll try to get a link for the seminar session that's going to be coming up. That's going to be really around how churches can use technology better. That's something that has been a passion of mine for a long time, and I'm hopeful for more even in the future of how we can use technology in a better way. Don't think it'll ever take the place of in-person church, but it doesn't mean it can't be an also thing. Yes. So I think that'll be important, and I'm looking forward to hearing some more about that.
When you brought that up, the words that came to my mind were survive or thrive.
Yeah.
You know, are you just going to survive this, or are we actually going to thrive from
Yeah.
And
Good
I
stuff.
guess that goes along with adaptation or innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it would be a good idea. We've been on for a little while now. I'd like to go ahead and wrap things up. If you head over to the West Ohio Conference Facebook page, you'll find the bishop's weekly prayer time that he has and some more devotional. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more from him, you can go over there. Do want to remind you that we are back to in-person church. We're also doing it on Facebook and YouTube, so you can stick around there. But we are in person, 9 a.m. traditional, 10 o'clock Sunday school, 11:15 contemporary service, and that's the one that right now we are doing the live stream of. So be sure to check that out. We're starting to do some more in-person things. I know Corinne's got some stuff coming up for the kids, so stay tuned for that. You can find that information on our Facebook page, and
retreat this weekend.
Retreat this weekend for the youth. Dave's getting ready to take the kids off to Beulah Beach, and hopefully you guys will all have a great time there and all go well. So taking my wife, 2 of my kids. One of them gets to stay here. If she mocks me, she might get called out, so she should probably be good.
Or was she mocking me?
I don't know. So, hey, thank you all so much for being a part of this. We'll be back here with you again next Wednesday. Thank you to James Adkins over there. I don't think I thanked you at the beginning. We were just kind of going. So thanks, James.
You're welcome.
You're a good guy. I like you.
James, can you close out with that funky thing right there? What's that instrument behind the person I must not name? No. That
one?
Yeah. What is that?
It's a lap steel, and it won't really sound like much without being plugged in.
Oh, okay.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's all right.
I can show people though,
You can show people.
and it's way out of tune.
I don't know what it's supposed to sound like, but I don't think that.
Yeah.
Like, being at James' house is like being at a museum of stringed instruments.
It kind of is.
Yeah, it's a little bit out. It's basically like a dobro but electric.
Oh, it's like a dobro.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah.
We don't know what a dobro is either.
No. Well, it's like that but acoustic.
All right, thank you guys so much for being with us today. You got something to play, don't you?
Well, I do. This is kind of a dobro.
Okay,
It's
play.
not exactly. It's a resonator, and I've broken a string on it.
That's all right. I trust you.
Let's get Amelia to play it.
Yeah, it's good.
If only she was here. We're not
Yes.
supposed to mention her name.
I tell you what.
Do you want to come sit here? You can be on camera for a minute.
Yeah.
No?
She was on the headset for a while. She listened to the interview.
She basically ran the show.
She ran the show today.
Come here.
I'll jump up there. You don't even
All right, we're out of here today. We'll see. You want to say bye? Just say bye.
Bye.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
All right, here comes our theme. On purpose this time.
It's Church Chat with Pastors Dan and Dave. Come hang out with us on our stream. It's Church Chat Wednesday.
All right, we'll see you guys. Take care.